This is our Callisto Bralette that I made a few changes to add these lace panels in the front and back and along the waistband. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to make the pattern corrections, and then I'll have a separate video for cutting and sewing. So to start, take your Callisto Bralette pattern and cut it out and place the pieces together along the moons. For the front, I only cut out half because you really only need half, but for the waistbands, you'll want to cut out the whole thing. So to start, and this applies when you're doing any sort of pattern corrections or pattern changes, you always want to mark in your seam allowance if you have to. The seam allowance is already visibly there, that's fine, but you want to mark in your seam line so that you can make your corrections accurately. So to the front and to the back, I am adding in the seam allowance that is on the side seam and the underbust seam. There is no seam allowance along the neck or the underarm. Next thing you want to do is sort of figure out where you want your lace to be placed. And this really is up to you, but there are a few things you want to keep in mind. You don't want to go too high, because then sort of you lose the illusion and the lace starts to peek out over the neckline. But also the direction of stretch should be going around the body, and on lace galloon like this, it goes horizontally parallel to the scallop. So the more that you twist it up, the less stretch you're going to get going around. So you just want to find like a happy medium so you still have enough stretch, but you sort of get the look you're going for. So this is about where I wanted mine. So I just drew a line in. You want it to be straight or else you won't be able to line the scallop up with it. So then on the back, I wanted the seam, the side seam to be completely lace. So I was sort of playing around with how to get that in there. Again, the same thing applies for the back. You want to make sure that you keep it, the direction of stretch going around the body as much as possible while still getting the design you want. So then again, just draw a straight line, and we'll go later once we're done with sort of the marking up of the pattern and trace out these lace pieces. For the waistband, on the original Callisto Bralette, the waistband is meant to be folded along that center and applied like this. But with the scallop edge, what I'm going to do is basically make two new pieces that are just the width of the piece if it had been folded, so that I can have the straight edge for the scallop. So I'm just going to draw a line down the center on our front waistband and the back waistband. From there, you're going to take some scrap pieces of paper, anything big enough to put your pieces on, and trace out your lace pieces. So when I'm tracing out new pieces, the first thing I do is start with any straight line. So I take my ruler, line it up. This paper you can see through pretty well. If you can't see through your paper, you can either take it over to a window, or you can use a tracing wheel and put the pattern on top. But when I'm doing curved edges, I just like to mark them in and make sure you mark your notches. But I just like to mark them in, and then I'll go back with like a French curve and straighten everything out. So then I just label my pattern pieces. Again, I mentioned earlier, make sure you mark your notches in. The notches are super important on this pattern because it helps with the placement of the waistband along the bust, which is very strategic and allows for some extra fullness in the cup, so it's a little bit more comfortable. So same thing for like I said, for the waistband, I'm just sort of tracing out half of it so that it's the length that it is in the original Callisto Bralette without the lace, but I get the lace scallop edge along the bottom, which is really cute. Also, if you noticed here, I did not mark my notches in, which I'll go back and do later, because again, like I said, they're super important for this pattern. Then you're just going to go ahead and cut all your pattern pieces out. You shouldn't have to add any seam allowance to anything. Again, here I am adding in the notches that I forgot. Also, again, if you can't see through your paper, you can use a tracing wheel and place your pattern on top of the piece and go over the notches that way. So then once everything is cut out, you'll have all of your pieces. So you'll have your base front piece, you'll have your lace front piece, your base back piece, your lace back piece, and then your front waistband and your back waistband for lace. In part 2, I will be going over how to cut everything out, specifically how to cut a lace galloon, making sure that, you know, your pieces are mirrored, and then we'll start the sewing process. Happy pattern making, everyone. See you in part 2.